We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
With Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Welcome, everybody. It is Reality Rants. I am Jason Bermas. I want to thank all of you guys for coming along for the ride. We got another jam-packed show for you today. As always, we do the first hour across platforms. Second hour is over at redvoicemedia.com/Jason or redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. Sign up today for only $1. Get a week. Love it. Pay $10 a month or lock it in for a year for only $100. What are we talking about today? Well, I sat down and I watched the Trumpsky and Hutch interview with the Tuckins. Okay, and number one, first of all, hour-long program. Every once in a while, Tucker does a full hour, no commercial breaks. And that's major pull on, a for-profit news organization when you're the number one show, because the number one show usually makes the number one revenue and ads, and they want you to play those ads. He didn't do that with this. I was kind of disappointed. I thought that this was a big enough deal that, he was sitting down with, obviously, Trump, who is the front runner for the Republican nomination, who is the former president, who is now officially indicted in one of these many cases. Okay, one of these many cases. And we didn't get that. Instead, we also got Tucker periodically on the beach, windy, with his hair blowing around, talking about it. So really the interview itself, the chunks you got was like, 35, maybe 40 minutes of interview. And if you watch Trump, you know that he has no problem rattling off 35, 40 minutes, an hour plus on his own. No help at all, no questions. And look, there are some things that still really rub me the wrong way about Donnie T, and the idea that this time is going to be much different, and finally Donnie T is going to eradicate the deep state. And there was a highlight in this interview that really projected that to me. And that highlight was him talking about him sitting down at Mar-a-Lago with President Xi and discussing how he had just launched 57 missiles into Syria, alluding to the idea, not alluding, stating as though it were fact that Assad gasses his own people. He didn't use Assad's name, but again, we're talking about Syrian leadership. He talked about gas attacks, and then specifically the gas attack in Duma. All right, he did not name it by name, but there was no gas attack in Duma. And you could call me a kooky, dangerous conspiracy theorist if you'd like. If you'd like, YouTube. But so when Trump says that, that's the fact, Jack. Okay? And you'll go with that, but then everything else he says is a lie? See how that works? See, there's a big problem and a disconnect. If Trump can't openly admit that he was out there in the weeks before the supposed gas attack in Syria saying it's time to leave Syria. In fact, one of the first things they talk about in the interview is the Afghanistan withdrawal. And he says, look, we shouldn't have been in Afghanistan in the first place. We should have gotten out of there. But the way they did it was absurd. And you take the military out last. And I tend to agree with that. That's a pretty simple, basic idea. Now, later on, he also says, we weren't going to leave all the way. There are some strategic positions there as opposed to China that he was interested in. Okay, and that's fine. But the Syria shit is not okay. Let me repeat that for you. It is not okay. We're going to play the clip. We're going to do a full breakdown of it. And in it, he kind of also alludes to the fact, and this is how the story gets going, that President Xi more than likely speaks English. Okay, now don't get me wrong, he has an interpreter there, but this may be a way to kind of play possum, to feel out the room, if you will, or other situations where people may be speaking English around him, and he wants to see what else is being said. Again, love China, hate China, indifferent to China. You'd be a fool to think that Xi isn't a smart man. Of course. Of course he's a smart man. And that's something that Trump also talked about in this interview. That's reality. But what's not reality, and we'll do it live here. We'll do it live. People are always going after me for using Google. Tough titty. OPCW leaks Syria gas. All right, so there it is. So Chemical Weapons Watchdog defends Syria report after leaks. This is all the way back in 2019. Now, recently we've been talking about, and we'll talk about again today, the NATO documents that have been leaked, which our State Department is saying has no business on the front of a newspaper. Now, there are the OPCW Duma docs. The report that they put out, okay, and remember, this is the authoritative source. And this is a broader spectrum of how this works. So you send investigators there, but you already know what the outcome is going to be, no matter what. No matter what your investigators tell you, we've got a narrative for you. And that's what this was. This was a what? Narrative push. Whistleblower claims OPCW's findings misrepresented some facts over 2018 chlorine attack. No, that's not what they did. The actual OPCW leaks, the emails that WikiLeaks published, outright straight up says there's no attack. It's imagination land. They never proved any type of an attack, let alone a gas attack occurred. And somehow the guy that's supposedly going to finally take down the deep state doesn't know this. And this was a big contention for me. When the guy was in office and I had to sit up there and watch hearings on it and watch our government, our Defense Department, our State Department sit there and talk about imagination land attacks in Syria. And then when they were challenged on it, well, was there a gas attack in Duma? Russian disinformation. Oh. So when it's not the Russia collusion hoax, the Trump administration will also embrace the Russia narrative. F that. Stop this train. I want to get off. And that's a problem. It's a big problem for me. In fact, that was the biggest problem of that interview for me last night. Because I'm in a place called reality. And I'm not convinced First of all, I'm not convinced that there's a path to a legitimate national election as of right now. All right? And this has been a slow, incremental change of not really corruption, because there's always been corruption in elections. There's always been people trying to cheat elections or stuff the ballots or commit fraud in elections. It's the norm for power, okay? So we're not talking about that. We're talking about the fact that we've legitimized systems that inherently are corrupt and unauditable, and the mainstay of those systems are the voting machines themselves. Now, those in power want nothing more than to keep the same methods they used in 2020 on the table in 2024, especially with the mail-in ballots. And people are asking me, now that the emergency is over, the COVID-19 84 nightmare is officially over. I still see people in masks, even here. I shake my head every time I see like a person or a family in a mask, or even a worker at the place that I get my morning coffee wearing a mask. I'm like, what happened? What happened that you're so traumatized 3+ years later? What is it? Syria, were you not hugged enough as a child? Did they constantly just run horror movies when you were a kid? You're watching Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. What's going on here? In fact, I would think that would harden and toughen up more people. So people are telling me that, or asking me rather, that now that the emergency is over, is Big Pharma protected? Will they keep these mail-in ballots? And the answer is, I don't know. I have no idea what the repercussions are going to be for either of those things, but I can tell you this, those in power badly want those mail-in ballots so they can run what? Simulations with sliders and show everybody and put it in the public's mind what the outcome will be. What the outcome will be, despite any facts. Because facts don't matter. It's all about the feelings. It's how I feel. And again, the narrative is the feeling that Donnie T is the new Hitler. He's the Hitler guy. He's the new authoritarian. And look, I watched the rest of that interview. Dude is sharp. And he also talks about age. There was a couple moments there where literally Trump discussed two of the things we discussed yesterday on the broadcast in the morning, including Joe Biden being unable to answer Al Roker in a comprehensive manner, in which he literally talks about, we're rolling an egg and we're going to push it out. When I get asked whether or not I'm going to run for office, the presidency in particular, after being installed as a zombie puppet, and I often go to rolling an egg and pushing it out. We're rolling an egg and we're pushing it out. By the way, guys, get your questions and comments in. We might take some of those questions and comments here on Reality Rants today over in the YouTube mark. And I do want to thank everybody that is supporting the broadcast out there. And I wanted to personally thank Lyle. I'm not going to say your last name, but a little bit of a donation over via PayPal, and every little bit helps anyway. In any which way you can do it, the links are down below. We really do appreciate you supporting the broadcast, and especially supporting redvoicemedia.com and Premium. So before I go to the clip, before I even get into this clip and we play it with the Tuckins and, Trump talking about she's a beautiful, you can't say she's beautiful, but she's beautiful. Talking about the translator for Xi. And then we'll get further into the OPCW documents, and we'll probably bring up the emails themselves that show, hey, we went in there, hey, we gave the report, and hey, the final report's not the truth. It's not the truth. Big issue. Another thing that Trump did, and I'll even put this towards his credit, is he admitted that he killed a bunch of Russian soldiers, okay, during that 57 missile strike. And I've had people try to tell me that, oh, they launched the missiles into nowhere. It was a bluff. Trust the plan. Where we go one, we go all. Trust the plan. That's parrot bullshit, okay? Those missiles hit targets and killed people. And he admits that he killed Russian soldiers who were supposed to be our allies at that point. And he says that the Russian soldiers were doing things they weren't supposed to do. Really? Wasn't it really in reverse? Now, Trump outwardly said that he was going to decimate ISIS and kill all the baddies. Trump's going to kill the baddies. You look at the history of ISIS, you look at the connection to John McCain and the Chevy trucks and the American rifles. Sure looks like we might have propped them up. Sure looks that way. Now, I'm not saying Donnie T propped them up. That's not it. But since the same establishment that propped them up was really in control of the military action in that region, it was doubtful that any of this was going to be successful. Now, the Russians, however, come in and they just start chopping it up. Boom, boom. Because they're actually allies with Assad. And at the time, you know, we were still on pretty good terms with Russia. The hysteria hadn't reached its peak yet. And we were supposed to be allied there. Trump actually said he felt bad about killing the Russian soldiers. So I'm going to give him this much. I'm going to give him this much. And, you know, it's funny because I hosted another show yesterday. I hosted Making Sense of the Madness out of nowhere. You know, I got a text like an hour and a half beforehand. And I'm interviewing Ted Harvey, who's a former state senator, super conservative, somebody that worked in the Reagan administration. And we're talking deep state, we're talking Trump, we're talking Stop Joe Super PACs, all these things. And for the most part, obviously, he's got the conservative talking points and the talking points of Trump doing things that other Republican presidents always said they were going to do and never did. Okay? And one of those talking points that he used that I didn't have the chance to push back on because it's a 4-break formatted show. And I actually interviewed Joe Hoft of the Gateway Pundit after that, who's constantly getting re-truthed by Trump. You know, and I think I have great conversations with Joe Hoft. We've had him on this program before. We should probably get him for a full hour for a really open discussion about what's going on. And when I talked to Harvey said, you know, people have talked about making the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem and making Jerusalem the capital of Israel. And I cringed for a second. I was like, oh, is that really what most conservatives want? Now, perhaps mainline conservatives wanted that. But many, I would say, anti-war conservatives or those that are aware of the power of Israel, not only in the Middle East, but within our own intelligence apparatus, through Five Eyes and beyond, through the fact that, you know, Israel, although supposedly our ally, runs the most aggressive espionage operations of any other nation state within our nation state, according to Fox News of all places, pre-9/11. Everyone wants to talk about those dancing Israelis and the trucks, and we do in Fabled Enemies, but we also talk about the actual networks that are inside via Amdocs and Comverse, and then the networks of Israeli art students and others that had penetrated all these different bases. They were in mall kiosks. And again, you had some being picked up pre-9/11. You had the incidents on 9/11 that involved others within that group. And then you had more people being picked up after 9/11, none of which were charged. Think about that. And again, to Donnie T's credit, when he was put on the spot about Live Golf months and months and months ago, and we played it here, and Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11, and obviously there are financier aspects, especially to the alleged hijackers, and you can follow a lot of that money through a program called Vulgar Betrayal via the FBI and a guy named Yassine Qadi. all in my film, Fabled Enemies, okay? That's real, but Trump said we've never really gotten to the bottom of 9/11. We haven't had a real investigation, and we don't know who did it. Why did we get that under his administration? Why are we not pushing as a people for that administration that he says is going to take on the deep state to really take on the deep state? That's what really taking on the deep state is about. Exposing a massive crime from over 20 plus years ago that literally reshaped our civil liberties in this country openly. You know, I tune into Jonesy during the day sometimes, and Alex is kind of on this new kick. It's not really a new kick. He's bringing it back kick of the civilian defense force that Obama really talked about during the beginnings of his first term of his presidency. Kind of like a Peace Corps, but really a national security apparatus that's as well funded as the actual one. What do you think signature reduction is? That is America's secret military sitting inside private organizations and private groups directed by the military industrial complex, the deep state, with certain individuals placed there to set up their systems of track, trace, database, command, and control. Okay? So he's not wrong to put that out, but really that's not an Obama original. That's how authoritarian states work. Right? Hey, that's how old Adolf got his start. Right? Not just World War I, but post-World War I. What? He was one of those spies, if you will, that would just integrate into the population, see what was going on, and then narc them out. The old narc system. They love that. They love it. All right. We're going to get into the Trump tuck-ins in a second. That's the next big thing, I promise you. We're going to play this clip of him talking about Xi Jinping, English, and then really, again, the Syria OPCW debacle, because we're going to bring those up. I just want to take a step back, right? It's Reality Rants. We're 20 plus minutes deep into it. And say, I like to smile, and simple things make me smile. And that's why yesterday, when I was out thrift shopping, as I often do, I go and I look for vintage video games, electronics, sometimes antiques. I saw this, and I'm not even sure that this is Disney. Let's take a better look. It sure, obviously that looks like Donald Duck, but it says 1976 Peter Pan Industries. I'm not sure this is even really Disney, but it's a disco album, look at Donald, if it is Donald, having a blast with Daisy Duck. And I'm not sure who the author is, but maybe somebody can tell me whether or not this is an official Disney product. Just, again, totally random, made me smile. I do want to point this out, however. All right, I've talked about how my experience on Twitter is obviously throttled, and it has been. And that's why I'm not sure whether or not I even want to buy the blue check mark. Now, I want you just to see a really simple demonstration of this. It's right here, and anybody can see it. So I've got my Disco Duck Dance Party. It says there's two responses to it. So I click it, okay? Let's scroll down. There's the one response right here. This person says that they had the album. There are additional replies, right? We know at least one more, supposedly. I hit show. I get nothing. So am I not allowed to see the other person who made a comment on it? There isn't censorship still going on at Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it at this point? Elon Musk claims Twitter is breaking even. Blue ticks will be gone next week. He's also telling you that he sleeps on the couch of a 7th floor library. Bullshit. Again, he's the couch surfing cool guy billionaire. And Twitter is no longer. It's X Corp. And somehow he got rid of 6,500 employees. 6,500 employees. Now, a lot of people are going to say, yeah, Muskernuts cleaned house. Still got 1,500. Still got the national security apparatus in there. What did he do? He trimmed the fat. Okay, and the bottom line is, a lot of those people that were worthless, that worked there, that were paper pushers and nothing people, they are going to be automated out. By what? Yes, what they're calling artificial intelligence. It's not really AI, okay, but it is algorithmic programming that can take out a lot of these communications majors. A lot of these people that really, they don't do much. They're not that valuable. And they don't do much. All right, let's get to the Trump and Tuckins right now.
It's the only time he said, repeat. That was the only word I've ever heard him say in English, meaning he speaks English, okay?
So let's bring it back, meaning he speaks English. Boom.
I told China, if you buy any oil from Iran, President Xi, very good conversations. I liked him a lot. I told him we shot 57 missiles into Syria while he was having chocolate cake. It's the only time he said, repeat. That was the only word I've ever heard him say in English, meaning he speaks English, okay? You know?
Xi speaks English?
Well, I'll tell you what. This is an interesting thing. We're having dinner at Mar-a-Lago, and he wanted to be at Mar-a-Lago. We had a great weekend, but we're having dessert now, beautiful chocolate cake at Mar-a-Lago. He had his people, I had mine. He was telling me stories about China, the history of China. It's very amazing. It's got an amazing 5,000 years, amazing history.
5,000 years, an amazing history. I mean, you got to admit the guy, is at least entertaining as he talks. And he's definitely got his own style.
And President Obama didn't go over the red line, and because of that, Russia took over Syria, and there's a whole big thing, right? You know that. If Obama would have done what he said he was going to do, because they were killing children. They were killing children with gas bombs, by the hundreds, by the thousands in Syria.
Let's stop. Let's stop right there. That's not true, Don. That's not true. And now you've had 3 years, whether you were lied to or not, and he was, listen, there's no doubt about the fact that this guy was constantly lied to. If you go back, and I'm not even sure if they're still available, but I certainly reported on them, and you can actually listen to them on my program. If you go back to when Rick Grenell, his national security advisor, had an assistant high level that was talking to Cassandra Fairbanks, and Fairbanks was taping their conversations. It became clear that Donald Trump and apparently Don Jr. had been shown pictures that were said to be casualties of war, men, women, and children, that they assigned to Assange and WikiLeaks. And that's really what pushed him over the edge on Assange. Bullshit. It's not real. They couldn't prove it in court. So once again, him projecting this lie is dangerous. It's not good. It's bad news brown. So right here, you can actually see it. If you go to wikileaks.org/OPCW-Duma, that's where we're at. This is the fourth part of the release. But as you can see, here's 3, here's the internal email, and here's the whistleblower panel. It's all here. And there are the redacted emails of the toxicology reports, of the toxicology meeting, of the exclusion of Duma, and the removal of engineering report. They're all right there. The emails are right here. It's clear. To solicit expert advice to the value of exhuming suspected victims of the alleged chemical attack in Duma on the 7th of April, 2018, according to the minutes, the OPCW team was advised by the experts that there would be little use in conducting exhumations. The point was to elicit expert opinions from the forensic toxicologists regarding the observed and reported symptoms of the alleged victims. Pearson Sharp of OAN went there. He went to Duma, where the gas attack supposedly happened, and found zero evidence of that. In fact, he found counter evidence long before this. Now, again, a network like OAN is constantly pushing Trump. Will you see anybody else in the alternative media or mainstream media call Trump out on this bullshit? Anybody else? It has to be done. It has to be done. It's important to point out the truth when you're dealing with death showers, when you're dealing with real foreign policy. Let's go back to the Trump nugget.
And he said, if that happens again, and it happened a number of times, and he still never went over the line, but I did. So I shot 57 missiles, almost every one of them hit, into a military area, which had a lot of planes, wiped out a lot of planes, also had Russian soldiers, by the way. You know, they say I was so nice to Russia, right? I killed the pipeline. I sadly killed a lot of Russian soldiers, that 500 group, because they were doing things that they weren't supposed to. Nobody writes that, and I don't want them to write it. I'm not proud of it, but we did that, as you know.
So once again, the slightest bit of respect that he admits that they killed Russian soldiers, and it wasn't a positive thing. But again, it's wrapped in a lie, and it's not giving you the larger perspective.
But we shot approximately 57 missiles. And so when I dealt with President Xi, I was with him the whole weekend. He had an incredible, I'm not allowed to say it because it's very impolite and very politically incorrect, a beautiful female interpreter. She was very beautiful. Today, if you say it, they'll say, this is terrible. You're not allowed to say that. But she was very professional. She spoke every word for him. Very professional. Had another couple of them too, but she was there, and we're having dinner. And he would come in and say hello. She would say hello. He wouldn't say any word. But I said to him, a general came up and said, do we do it now? I said, yeah, you have to do it now. So I gave the order during dinner. Then I said, well, do I tell him? Because they're very closely associated with Syria. Do I tell him now, or do I wait till he finds out after dinner? Because you have about 28 minutes before they hit. So I said, President, we've just fired approximately 57 missiles into Syria, into a base. The missiles are on their way right now. He looked at me and goes, repeat. That's the only time he's ever said it. So I think he speaks English. The only word, he never said hello or goodbye. He only dealt through an interpreter. The only word I ever heard him say was repeat. That's an unusual word. I said,
how smart is he? Could you tell?
Top of the line.
Top of the line.
Yeah, they're all top of the line. Our guy's not top of the line. Never.
Our guy's not top of the line. I can't really argue with that. Again, it's been nothing but a bunch of unimpressive losers for the most part. And I wish it wasn't that way, but that's the truth. Old Donnie T. All right, I got a ton of stories over here that I did want to go over. I've got this Josh Hawley clip with the Secretary of Energy, essentially calling out the climate crisis nonsense. But there's a slew of other stories that I want to hit before that. I also want to talk about Singapore. I've got a video on that, on how Singapore's, really its economy and its model for society are the global model should the predator class succeed. And it's actually highlighted in the Westworld series, where Singapore itself is kind of portrayed as a global capital in the future. Okay? And why is it that way? Because it's an authoritarian regime. Yeah, their economy boomed, and apparently they only have 2.2% unemployment, but they're authoritarians. They get to decide what is true or false, fact and fiction. And we've seen that more and more and more and more in this country, and the push for that more and more and more globally, and the attempt to criminalize speech, and then create their own narratives based on a limited amount of information they project to you, okay? And to me, there's probably no better current example of this than the January 6th footage. Now, this is also something that I discussed with Joe Hoft yesterday, okay? The January 6th committee said they release all of the evidence, okay? All of the evidence, and then Kevin McCarthy said he would do the same thing. Remember, McCarthy basically said that this was going to happen after those that opposed him as speaker came around. It was one of the deals that was cut. That was in January. That was said in January. We're in April. Okay? And Ford's right. It feels like everybody just sort of forgot. I have not forgotten. Think about the power of the footage that just the Tuckins put out. That was, what, maybe 5 minutes of footage tops? 5 minutes? Can you imagine if I had access to 40,000+ hours of that footage? First of all, it would be a daunting task to go through. I'd be scrubbing through a lot of it. I'd be looking for key times and key incidents, and who knows what I would miss. But I promise you, it wouldn't be 5 minutes that I released. Okay? And the other really important aspect of that is to acknowledge the fact that after he put out the Jacob Chansley videos, the QAnon shaman, the Muffin Man, there was really no choice but to release him. Okay, the establishment didn't want to release him. They wanted to continue to paint him as a dangerous insurrectionist. He's so... I keep seeing things. Oh, look at him storming the Capitol. The guy was in makeup and animal skins, topless, with a flag in his hand, stopping people from stealing muffins. Wow. Wow. Just wow. That's the reality we live under. That's the reality. I'm going to go to this Hawley clip right now. Okay? We're going to bring it up. We're going to do it live. That's the next thing on the agenda. And look, I've got problems with Hawley. There's no doubt about it. I'm not... Yeah, I think that he's a bit of a China-phobe, right? I don't think it's China, just like it's not Russia. But when it comes to like the climate crisis and taking on the energy secretary, pretty spot on. Here we go, Hawley.
As you know, we're very proud in the state of Missouri of the work that's done at the Kansas City National Security Campus to support the nation's nuclear enterprise. I just wonder if you can give me an update on the NNSA's efforts to ensure that the Kansas City campus has the capacity it's going to need, the additional capacity it's going to need to meet production requirements in the coming years.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. We're also very proud of the Kansas City National Security Campus. And I'm pleased to report we're making good progress on expanding capacity and moving towards the purchase of facilities and land that could help us in the future make sure that we're right-sized at Kansas City.
Good, very good. Secretary Granholm, today in the state of Missouri, the average price of gasoline today, as of this morning, is $4.10. Average price of diesel is $5.18. And I'm sure you've seen the reporting this morning that now AAA is projecting that gas prices will hit a national average of $6 a gallon by the month of August. Is this acceptable to you?
No, it is not. And you can thank the activity of Vladimir Putin for invading Ukraine and pulling essentially those...
Oh, nonsense. Thank you, Josh. You can thank the Vladimir for the elevated cost of gas. Oh, thank you. I would have preferred, instead of oh, nonsense, and by the way, can we get the thumbs up to 100? Can we get them up? Can we get the likes and the shares and all that good stuff? I would have preferred oh, nonsense to total bullshit. Stop lying. You're a liar. That's not true. That's just me. That's how I would have felt about it. It's just me.
With all due respect, Madam Secretary, that's utter nonsense. In January of 2021, the average gas price in my state was $2.07. 8 months later, long before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, that price was up over 30%, and it has been going up consistently since. What are you doing to reverse this administration's policies that are drawing down our own supply of energy in this country, that are throttling oil and gas production in the United States of America? What are you doing about it?
With respect, sir, it is not administration policies that have affected supply and demand.
How can you say that when the price of gas was up over 30% from January to... you answer my questions, and it's my time, Madam Secretary.
It's my time. I'm not even sure how old Holly is. I'm probably older than Holly. I just... You know, he's good on some issues, especially this one. Like calling out the nonsense that, you know, for some magical reason, you know, everything is the poot's fault. Has nothing to do with the fact that we shut down refineries here. Has nothing to do with the fact that we're selling off our reserves. Nothing to do with that. No. And that's not to say that the oil companies themselves aren't making record profits. You're damn right they are. And that is a problem. And there needs to be regulation there. But they're really trying to regulate out cheap, efficient energy under the guise of we're killing the planet. We're killing the planet. And they're not acknowledging, you know, another highlight of the Trump interview that's just obvious sauce is when they talk about the Nord Stream pipeline. And, you know, even Trump said, you know, it was absurd to say that Russia blew up their own pipeline, among many other absurd things involving Russia. But more and more, we have to point out the fact that obviously that was a U.S.-led operation, and obviously, if you believe their lies about carbon, that may have been the largest man-made carbon disaster ever. So let's go back to Josh Hawley.
Why don't you answer my question? From January to August, the price of gasoline was up over 30%. In my state alone, it has been a continuous upward tick since then. And here's what your president did when he first came to office. He immediately re-entered the Paris Climate Accord. He canceled the Keystone Pipeline. He halted leasing programs in Anwar. He issued a 60-day halt on all new oil and gas leases and drilling permits on federal lands and waters. That's nationwide. That accounts, by the way, for 25% of U.S. oil production. He directed federal agencies to eliminate all supports for fossil fuels. He imposed new regulations on oil and gas and methane emissions. Those were all just in the first few days. Are you telling me that's had no effect on our energy supply?
94% of the oil and gas executives that were surveyed by the Dallas Fed said that administration policies had nothing to do with the increase in the price of oil.
I'm not interested in opinions of these people. I'm interested in the facts. Are you telling me that these policies had no effect? Is that your testimony that these policies had no effect? Are you telling me, Madam Secretary, are you telling me under oath that these policies had no effect?
I'm telling you that 94% of the oil and gas industry...
I'm not interested in their opinion. I'm interested in the facts.
I'm not interested in their opinion. I'm interested in the facts. And notice how this person, again, establishment politician, will not and really cannot directly answer the question. Period.
So, no, they did not ask
That is
Vladimir
a remarkable statement.
About the increase in demand and the decrease in supply from pulling Russian barrels of oil off the market, thanks to rightly the United States saying we're not going to take Russian oil. Coming out of COVID.
So what explains the increase between January and August of 2021?
Coming out of COVID, there was an increase in demand because people were driving again. When there was no demand, the prices dropped. That is a basic law of economics. The prices dropped.
I have to say, Madam Secretary, with all due respect, your answers are insulting. And they are insulting to the people of Missouri who are looking for action.
Again, man, Holly ain't perfect, but thank you. You know, they are insulting. I'm sick of being treated like a child. Santa Claus ain't real, and neither's the Easter Bunny. Okay, stop treating me like you know better than me, and I'm just going to say what I want to say and protect you from the truth because the ends justify the means. I'm not a child. I don't like being talked to like I'm a child by anybody. It is insulting. It's disrespectful. That's not how you talk to other human beings or adults. But that's how they talk to us. Okay? They treat us like children.
Now, you said 2 months ago your department was on war footing. What are you doing to bring down the price of gasoline, which has been going up consistently since you took office?
The price of gasoline is derived from the price of oil. The price of oil is at $110 a barrel.
What are you doing to decrease it?
On
is
a
my
global
question.
market, sir. If you could let me finish.
If you would answer my question.
Yeah, not answering him. Again, he's damn right. She's just saying things. It's not an answer to the question. What are you doing to lower the price of a barrel of oil? A lot of people forget this during the COVID 1984 nightmare 3 years ago, right around 3 years ago. Oil went to zero. Remember that? Does anybody else remember that? Went to zero. Out of nowhere. Well, I mean, not out of nowhere, out of a contrived crisis. It didn't seem real because none of it really was real. Because if the stock market was real, it would be allowed to fail and they can just magically shut it down. Shut it down. Would you shut it down? It's not capitalism. This person isn't giving any kind of a solution. And Holly is right to call her on her nonsense.
Answering your question, sir. Oil is traded on a global market. We are paying extremely high prices today, just as they are in Japan.
What are you doing to get it down?
Just as they are in Germany. Just as they are in South Africa.
What are you doing to get it down?
We are calling for an increase in supply. We are releasing 1 million barrels a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to try to balance out.
Who are you getting it calling for an increase in supply from?
It is the largest tool that we have to be able to do that.
Who are you calling for an increase in supply from?
Excuse me.
Secretary, please.
Senator Hawley, your time's expired.
Could I get an answer to this question, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Thank you. Can he get an answer to the... They can just blindly say whatever they want. We're calling for more oil production. To who? To the tooth mother truck and ferry? Who?
Who are you calling for an increase in supply from?
From our domestic oil and gas manufacturers, from international oil and gas manufacturers.
Even as you cancel their leases?
Senator Hawley, if you want...
Look at that face. Well, no, we are canceling their leases. We are canceling their leases. No big deal. Jennifer Granholm, not the best. We're going to be going to the premium in a little over 10 minutes. RedVoiceMedia.com/Jason. RedVoiceMedia.com/uncensored. I'm calling out to the Bermas Brigade. If you haven't locked it in, please do so. Got 2 more subscribers over there. And really, guys, just to kind of, be quite honest, to pay my salary, we got to get up to like 500 subscribers that subscribe through that link, and we're somewhere a little over halfway there. Just a little over halfway, and thank you for all of you that have done that, okay? But consider it. $10 a month, $100 for the year, knock off 20, and a lot of you guys know that I've done it in the past. Before May 1st of this upcoming year, so in about, I don't know, we got 2.5, 3 weeks. Somewhere before then, I am going to do, I believe, a 24 video in 24 hours. I haven't done that in 4 or 5 years. Been a long time since I've actually sat down and put out 24 videos in 24 hours. Obviously, they're going to be shorter videos, but some of them are going to be in-depth interviews. Some of them will be pre-records. But for the most part, we usually go between 16 and 18, maybe even 19 hours live. And I'm going to use that as a driver for people to come over to redvoicemedia.com, where they're currently building a new studio, expanding, and trying to bring you more, not less, more content. And There may even be a new way we work out the second hour, because quite frankly, I love doing the second hour for you guys, especially the ones that are paid, and I love those that go over and even listen to it for free, or those that wait and 2 weeks later you get it. But I believe sometimes the second hour is stronger than the first, because there are certain videos and articles that we just can't go over when we're on YouTube, not in any meaningful way, and we do it on the other side, like straight up. We'll be talking about Singapore on the other side, okay? And we run out of time constantly in this first hour. So the second hour, we're going to see how we're going to work that, because I'm all about getting the information out to as many people as possible, but at the same time, there's an economic aspect to everything. If I want to make a living doing this, someone's got to charge some money so that they can pay me money, and then I can pay my rent, and I can keep this glorious home I'm in right now, okay, and bring this to you live from the great state of Iowa. Just want to put that out there. All right, I want to hit up some other news stories here down the line before we go over to the other side. Louisville gunman's family breaks silence to condemn his senseless acts of violence and reveal he did have mental health problems, but there were never any warning signs he would commit murder. Okay, so I know that people have focused on this latest gunman at a bank who was a employee who was being fired and was suicidal. And this is another aspect of the shooter with the manifesto that we haven't seen, that no one seems to be focusing on, that person also was suicidal. See, you can talk about death by cop when it's not a mass shooting, when it's somebody who carjacks something and takes them on a police chase, or, you know, I saw a really disturbing video the other day where a guy is sitting there trying to hit him with a stick, hitting him with a stick. And dude, he unloads like 12 bullets right in him, like point blank range. And the guy keeps coming. That's death by cop. That's a psychotic individual that seems to have some kind of a suicidal death wish. All right. And that's mentally disturbed. What people don't realize is whether it's somebody that has that suicidal death wish, or someone who all of a sudden kills his entire family and then blows his head off, or kills her entire family and then blows her own head off, that's the suicidal thoughts and behavior. They take away the homicidal angle. All right? And the girl that killed those kids and those teachers openly was telling people she planned on dying. Planned on dying. This person, the same deal. Where are the toxicology reports? What SSRIs were they on? How long were they on them? They don't care about human life. At the top, they care about command and control. And part of that is a drugging of the populace. And at the same time that you have a drugging of the populace, that makes them less mobile, less able to critically think, less able to be independent, but also have massive psychotic breaks and can no longer function. Love it. Love it. And then when they snap and they kill a bunch of people, you just ignore the drugs they were on, okay? And you blame the guns. Guns. The guns are the problem. And look, the social media aspect of some of these killings is repulsive and repugnant, obviously. But that's the society we live in. You know, people crave attention. I mean, think about how warped it is that you basically know you're going on a suicide mission. Okay? You know you're about to commit an act of immense and terrible evil. You know it. Like you're having the psychotic break, but somewhere in there you realize what you're doing. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a real psychotic break. But your inclination is to live stream murder. Wow. Is that a society that anyone could condone? Live streaming murder? So again, they'll show that this kid had a bunch of concussions, and they'll show that he's wearing a helmet when he's playing basketball, but they'll even admit that he had mental health problems. Won't tell you what drugs he's on. Won't give you a tox scan of any of these people. Why? It's pretty obvious why. So you think they're going to ban those type of psychotropic drugs? I wish. They want to expand, not ban that stuff. Period. All right. Got to go over this one. About 5 minutes left in the free portion of the broadcast. Remember, you can listen to the whole thing right now live over at the Podbean, the Info Warrior channel. Or please consider coming on over. Support the broadcast. redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. redvoicemedia.com/Jason. Abuse Survivors Network blasts Dalai Lama's blatantly sexual act after he asked 12-year-old boy to suck his tongue in public before the 87-year-old head monk office said he was just being playful. I don't even know if I want... I mean, I know that a lot of you have probably seen the video by now. Now, I'm not really big into cults and outfits, but I guess this is where I tell my tale of the Dalai Lama and a friend of mine that very unexpected ended up turning into a monk and traveling decrying the Dalai Lama, as a fake. And basically, a lot of Buddhist monks out there aren't so big on the Dalai Lama. When I see something like that, you don't want to think the worst. You can't think the best. But you got to explore what that's all about. And you got to wonder if it's the senility of an 87-year-old man that now thinks that's okay to do in public when he may have been doing similar things and maybe even worse things in private. And I think that I retweeted the picture out, but for those that don't know, the Bronfmans and Keith Raniere of the Nexium cult all met the Dalai Lama. I'm not saying there's much more of a connection there, but that's why you can't have figures like that. Unelected leaders that in many cases are worshipped, outright, and given a pass on any type of behavior. Super dangerous. Super dangerous. Super upsetting. Super unacceptable. Period. That's it. So, to talk about my friend, just really briefly before we go over to the second hour. Love the guy. I really do. I think he changed his name. I don't know what it is now. I believe his real name was John. His pledge name was Gump. And you can imagine why you would call somebody Gump. But never in a million years did I think that, he was a good-looking kid, tall, pretty athletic, that all of a sudden I would be on social media and I would see him with a shaved head in the full monk shawl outfit decrying the Dalai Lama. And years ago when he made this transition, he knew what I was doing. He's like, you got to expose the Dalai Lama, man. He's a bad dude. The whole system's bad. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know much about it, but thanks for informing me. All of this was quite a shock. But, I mean, when I see something like that in public, pretty disturbing. Pretty disturbing. And once again, that person seems to be without any actual or real repercussions. Okay? Just want to point that out. Senate Democrats, Chief Justice Roberts investigate Clarence Thomas's gifts from billionaire as they announce new hearing over court ethics. Remember, beginning of the week, we talked about that piece on Clarence Thomas. We talked about them talking about the Bohemian Grove, and ultimately what this is about is trying to what? Pack the Supreme Court. Put pressure on other justices to act like Thomas did something illegal. When again, if you think about a 30-year career where you're accepting gifts and trips from a billionaire and it doesn't even constitute $1 million, they talked about hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is like the lowest level, the lowest form of corruption you could imagine. You could imagine when you're talking about some of these ghouls. And again, I don't love the Bohemian Grove. And it is a place of undue influence. And yes, Clarence Thomas is a guy that goes there. Okay? But obviously, this is about something more insidious, more nefarious, and in my opinion, extremely dangerous. All right, we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to give the cue to the producer for us to begin to go over to the other side. I want to say goodbye one at a time. Rockfin, I love you. Couldn't do it without you. Fadista, thank you so much for the Tipsky and Hutch over at the Rockfin. It is appreciated. YouTube, you know the drill. It's been real and continues to be real, but it's really difficult to stay on your platform, especially when you're given Red Voice Media strikes for harmful conspiracy theories via videos I put up and you don't flag as harmful conspiracy theories. Just very bizarre how that works. You know, it's very, very bizarre how Twitter works and how YouTube works and how they continue to control